Well, hello, class, and welcome back for Chapter 2 of our Total Rewards class. This chapter is going to be kind of all about different choices and different internal structures that we're going to look at. This will kind of, again, form the foundation of what we're going to talk about for the rest of the semester. Compensation and Total Rewards is really all about making strategic choices, strategic decisions that affect you as an employee. As you can see, a company will have its own strategic choices. Whatever decisions it chooses to make itself better. How do they market themselves better? What kind of accounting practices do they utilize? Should they get in certain markets? A lot of these things you learn, in some of your other business classes. Well, compensation strategy is going to cover basically everything internal related to employees that help us gain that competitive advantage. For example, is it a good idea for a company to pay somebody at the very top of the pay scale or the very bottom of the pay scale? So argument for paying at the top is if you pay more than your competitors, you're going to attract the best employees, you're going to attract the most loyalty, you're going to basically get almost buy in somebody's value to the organization, and that's going to create all these other types of advantages. But the downside is it's expensive to hire the best people, and you have to continue to pay them more and more and give them more opportunities to sustain them long term, and that can be very expensive. And most companies' number one source of how they spend their money are on their employees through salary, benefits, and compensation. So how they view that's going to be very important. The flip side of that scale is a company could decide, we're going to pay our employees at the very bottom of the scale. And if we do that, yes, we're not spending very much money. By not paying our employees a lot, we have all this extra money for marketing, for product development, you name it. But the bad part is you're going to get employees who are not very loyal to you. Turnover is going to be a constant battle that you deal with. And if you ask any employer who's ever had a lot of turnover, it takes up a ton of time and money and resources trying to recruit and retain talent. So again, most companies will kind of fall somewhere in the middle between the highs and the lows, but it's important to know all this is related to a company's compensation strategy, and it's important that they get this right early on. So essentially what I want you to really understand from Chapter 2 is what we call the pay model, which guides our strategic decisions every day. And throughout the semester, we're going to be talking about the 5 strategic compensation choices. So first off, what objectives do we want to achieve by having whatever philosophy we decide upon? And again, there are several different philosophies that we'll talk about throughout the semester, but essentially what are we trying to accomplish? That's number 1. Number 2 is in what we call internal alignment, which we're kind of talking about in the next couple of chapters. Are people within the organization treated fairly? For example, if I have a marketing manager and another marketing manager, for example, if they have similar experiences and education, are they paid through their total compensation similarly? If one is paid significantly more than the other, and there's something that can kind of account for that, like education or experience, you're going to create major internal issues. You'll hear me talk about a term later in the semester called compression, where you have so many employees whose pays are so similar, or they're so far apart that the employees begin to notice these things and will create other issues. Again, it's a very important thing that we'll talk about later in the semester is, are employees internally aligned with each other? The third part is going to be what we call our external competitiveness. How are we paid compared to our employers or our competitors, if you will? So here at Oklahoma State University, go Cowboys just for the record, I get paid a salary and I get my benefits. But if our friends down in Norman decide to have the same position that I have, but they pay significantly more money, are they doing that because they're trying to attract a higher level of talent, or are they doing it because they want to remain competitive? So those are things that companies always have to consider, is how do we pay our employees versus how our competitors pay our employees. The fourth part is what we call employee contributions. How are employees giving back to their organization? What are we giving them as part of being an employer to entice them to stay? And then finally, the fifth part is management. And there's an old saying in business that employees tend not to leave an organization because they're unhappy with their job or because they're unhappy with their pay. Studies have statistically shown that employees are most likely to leave because they're unhappy with their manager, because their manager doesn't value them, doesn't appreciate what they offer. Those are the main reasons employees tend to leave. So Part of compensation and total rewards philosophy is making sure managers are on cue with what they're promising. So you take all of these 5 things together, and that is your compensation strategy and the focus of our semester. So there's so many different ways that companies can approach this, and I think it's really fascinating for us to kind of take this journey together and determine if you either own your own business someday or you find yourself as a manager of other people, how do these decisions affect you, and how are you going to become a more effective manager when these are the decisions you have to make in regards to your employees?